Hello, everybody. This is Jimmy. You're reading with Jimmy. And what we're going to do in this video is the minister's black veil. We're going to do an interpretation by yours truly, Jimmy. What an engaging and complex story, wasn't it? I hope you read it. I hope you read the analysis. So what we're going to do with this is we're going to do an interpretation. We're going to examine the story that goes a little deeper than the other video analysis. And why? Well, because I want to explore what the heck this veil is. This veil that caused all the commotion. It did cause a lot of commotion in that village, didn't it? So we never know why Hooper puts it on. We know he took a vow and he never took it off. Even after he died, he was buried with it. But we never know exactly why. There's hints of why he did it. But what the veil caused, pardon me, what the veil may stand for is what the interpretation of a story is. We only know he does it, but what we really see are people's reactions to it. And this is very important to understanding actually anything in life. When people do something different in life, it usually causes a commotion, right? Because people are used to ritual, they're used to habit. Habits are very difficult to break. I mentioned in the analysis, I think if you used to wear a suit to work or you didn't, as business became more casual, if you did wear a suit to work, everybody thought, well, he's going on an interview. So any kind of digression from the norm is usually looked upon with suspicion. And this goes way back in time when Galileo discovered that the sun, was not going around the earth, that the earth was actually going around the sun. That was that was like not a black veil per se, but still it was different, and they threatened to burn him to the stake. Anyway, if you go to Google and say, give me some interpretations on the minister's black veil, many of the interpretations, many of the analysis, in fact, almost all of the analysis suggests that Hooper does it because of some secret sin. The word sin is important. This is a story about a possibly Puritan village, Amish village, Quaker village, some type of village that is it's religious, right? So the usual interpretation is because of some secret sin, and that's really based on his first delivery after he put the veil on. His first sermon from the pulpit to the people, talking about what they hide, what they don't hide, etc. In fact, I didn't exactly quote it there, but when you look at what he was talking about, it was about sin, what we hide from each other as human beings. But there's no evidence that Hooper committed a secret sin, that he's even talking about sin. We're going to explore sin, but there's no evidence that Hooper had a secret sin. There isn't. In all the stories and books we read, we have to find the evidence in the story to support this thesis. As an example, let me jump outside for a moment the story. Nathaniel Hawthorne also wrote the Scarlet Letter, and in there, Hester Prynne is forced to wear a scarlet letter, A, on her bosom, on her dress, because she had a child. She wasn't married, or her husband was gone, and she had a child. And that's an interesting story. So she was kind of like an outcast. She was branded. That's like a brand. That's another. I think we'll read Scarlet Letter one day. In any case, in that story, there is evidence of what she did. She had a child. In this story, if you find it, email me, Jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com. I find no evidence that Hooper committed some type of sin, secret sin. So before you decide what the veil is or is not, I'd like to ask you a question. What does the veil cover? When Hooper shows up with the veil, he's covering his face, of course. But have you thought about the human face lately? This is not something, I'm sure you don't wake up, what's the human face about? I'm sure you don't think about things like that. But let's think about that for a moment, especially if you went through COVID. the more we, move away from 2020 and when COVID came here and we all had to wear masks, the more likely it is you don't have an experience. But if you went through COVID, you know what it means to cover your face with a mask. Now, in Hooper's case, he covered everything except his mouth. In our case, we covered everything except our eyes. Jimmy, yours truly, once wrote during those crazy years, people were meant to see each other's faces, not hide behind a mask. It's not a matter of just being used to seeing each other. It's a basic instinct of our natures. You want to see who you are dealing with. And the human face, all of the face, tells you about the person. Nothing is more expressive. Nothing is more revealing, except an action, perhaps, that tells you about a character. But the human face is an amazing construction. And without seeing the face, you're left to wander in your thoughts about what the person may be thinking, doing, saying. Before COVID, Jimmy was taught that only robbers cover their faces, right? When you're going to rob Bellacqua, I think Bellacqua, whatever it is, they put on masks in England when they rob banks. Bellacqua, I forgot how they say that. But think about this, the face is unique. Every face, every aspect of a face is individual. You can talk all you want about a doppelganger or whatever, a lookalike, but every face is different, and it contributes to displaying our emotions. Feeding, we feed through our face. Seeing, we smell, we communicate. It's an amazing structure. And one of the most distinguishing qualities of the face is that it's used for personal identity from person to person. Note that when Hooper comes out, one of the first things that the people say is that, how do we know it's him? We don't, it could be a stranger behind that veil, right? Without seeing his face, they don't know who it is. And there's amazing variety of faces, far greater than most other animals, I know people who study animals will disagree. Well, I can tell this lion from that lion. Well, good for you. A lion is a lion. He's going to eat me if I see him. But in any case, and I'm sure it's true of animals, there's delineation. But the human being, the human face is much more diverse, much more. And it's the result of evolution. And you can look this up too. University of California, Berkeley. Other science says that we can find facial bodily expressions signal at least 28 different categories of emotion. And you can look that up on Google. Your face conveys emotion. You may not believe, well, he's got a poker face, Jimmy. I can't tell what he's saying or what he's thinking. Well, that takes practice, doesn't it? But even a poker face, the astute observer, there's something in that face that is a signal that's telling you something. You can't hold an expression and be expressionless. You just have to be a good observer. But in this case, what does Hooper do? He covers everything. And suddenly, you don't even know if it's really Hooper. So the veil, initially, Hooper's cutting himself off from being a human being. He basically hides his face and therefore cuts himself off from the human experience. He hides his face, except for the slight smile that he seems to always have. He's always smiling. Why is he smiling? And he's not grinning. He's not laughing. He's got this slight smile. And you can look over the book again, the story. So it's a serious thing, but he smiles. Is he enjoying what's happening? Because remember now, he can see everybody, but they can't see him. Keep that in mind when we're doing this interpretation. So it's essentially chopping himself off from fellow human beings. He's becoming a nothing instead of a something. He's isolated. He becomes a thing. And you can see as his life progresses that he's treated like a thing. What do they call him? A bugbear, a hobgoblin, something unnatural, right? Because no one sees his face. So as people react, as you read to the change, some wondering if it's him, their imaginations go wild. You know this when he first showed up, that everybody's talking about it. He causes a big stir in the congregation, rustling of skirts, women fainting. They make up all sorts of stories. And when people don't understand something, that's generally what happens, isn't it? They start making crap up, right? They start making stories from the book, from the story. He could not walk the street with any peace of mind. You understand that? So he's never at peace with himself. Before the veil, he can walk, be at peace with himself, normal. He's with humans. They know him. He knows them. But once he throws on that veil, everything is different. So conscious was he that the gentle and timid would turn aside to avoid him. They walked across the street, right? They avoided him. And what others would make it a point of hardihood to throw themselves in his way. So some people actually confronted him and made him walk around them. The impertinence of the latter class compelled him to give up his customary walk at sunset to the burial ground. So he used to walk every sunset to the burial ground, to the graveyard. Why? Well, he's a minister, he's a pastor, right? It's a graveyard. He conducts funerals. He's praying for people's souls. Well, Jimmy, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in this. Well, it's okay. You don't have to be anything except study the story. Put yourself inside that story. It's a third-person narrator telling us this, and experience it. Just experience it. That's why we read, to see how other people lead their lives and how. For example, if you put on a black veil and you go to work tomorrow, you're going to HR. They're kicking you out, right? Well, he's the pastor. You see what they do. They try in there every which way. They're trying to get this guy to take that veil off, but he won't do it. It's an amazing story. In any case, so he was confronted by some people, trying to pick a fight, right? For when he leaned pensively over the gate of the graveyard, there would always be faces behind the gravestone, peeping at his black veil. Who are those faces? Well, could be little kids. Maybe it's the people who are dead. I don't think so. In this case, he's talking about people looking at him. And so a fable, you know what a fable is, right? It's a story, right? Went the rounds that the stare of the dead people drove him thence. In other words, it wasn't the guys confronting him or the Hardys confronting him. It was the dead people that drove him from coming to the graveyard every evening. See what I'm saying about what people make up? Oh, no. Oh, God, it's the dead people. It grieved him. He was grieving. He was sad to the very depths of his kind heart. This is the third-person narrator telling you that Hooper has a kind heart, and he's sad that he can't go and pray over the dead, and to observe how children fled from his approach. They run away from him. As the years go by, he doesn't take it off. They get used to it, and he becomes a very good preacher, right? He becomes the bugbear, becomes and it's something of interest, right? Oh, look at this. Dostoevsky said, famous writer, Russian writer, man gets used to everything, the beast. I want you to remember that. That's one of the rules of life. Man, in the universal sense, gets used to everything. The beast. Forget the beast for a moment, but what he's saying is that we get used to everything, don't we? Jimmy had fourth nerve palsy in his right eye once. He lifted something heavy and he had seeing double. So when he first started seeing double, it was crazy. He ran to the eye doctor. The doctor said it's fourth nerve palsy. Don't worry. It takes 8 to 16 weeks and it'll resolve itself. In the meantime, he prescribed 3M plastic overlay on Jimmy's right glass, which actually neutralized the double. Technology is amazing. But I got used to it. Jimmy got used to it after the first few days. Not at first, but after a few days, he got used to it, especially with the help of the 3M lens. And then ultimately, less than 8, actually, in 4 or 5 weeks, it resolved itself and he got his regular sight back. But I'll tell you, when that hit, it was not fun. Driving down the highway, you see 2 white lines instead of 1, and you don't know which one is real. But you get used to it. You get used to everything, right? Unfortunately, that's why Dostoevsky added the word the beast. And they got used to the veil. He put it on, he caused quite the commotion, and then they just got used to it, right? And it actually turned him into a really, really good preacher. So I want you to also remember that when he sees himself in the mirror and he avoids himself in looking in mirrors afterwards, he can't stand to look at himself either. So there's something in that veil, something about the veil that prevents a person from looking at him and looking at himself. So what is that veil? Well, the veil is a symbol. Perhaps it's hiding ourselves from ourselves. The veil, in my opinion, and Jimmy's opinion, is our self, S-E-L-F, capital words, our self, our essence, our us, who we are. If you read my Alice in Wonderland interpretations, the whole journey of Alice is to find out who she is. It's a beautiful, beautiful story. In any case, this veil is preventing him from looking at himself, and it actually is like a mirror to other people. If you remember, there's a certain point in there where someone says, it looks like he's seeing into my soul. Well, they can't see his eyes, so it's the veil that's seeing into his soul, into these people's souls. It's the veil that's doing all this thing. It's not Hooper, it's the veil, the symbol. So the key, Jimmy believes, is the next to the last paragraph in the story. I want to read that to you very, very carefully. This is right before he dies. The young preacher that's with him is trying to take off the veil, and Hooper grabs the veil and says, "No, you're not. You're not taking this veil off." And he goes, and he says it's not just the young preacher that's in his deathbed there. It's the deacons and the other people. It's Elizabeth is there. "Why do you tremble at me alone?" he cried, turning his veiled face around the circle of pale spectators. "Why do you tremble at me alone? You should tremble at each other." A profound statement to tell us what the heck this veil is all about, right? You shouldn't be trembling at me. You should be trembling at each other. Have men, this is a sad statement. Have men avoided me and women shown no pity? And children screamed and fled only for my black veil. Think about that. There's no pity, men avoid them, and children scream and run away. Ah! You know, children's, when they scream, they got those great vocal cords, right? What but the mystery which it obscurely typifies, the mystery that it typifies, has made this piece of crepe so awful? So he's asking them, what? It's not me. It's the mystery which this veil typifies has made it so awful. So the veil stands for something, he's telling them. It typifies something. And then he explains, when the friend shows his inmost heart to his friend, the lover to his best beloved, when man does not vainly shrink from the eye of his creator, lonesomely treasuring up the secret of his sin, then deem me a monster. For the symbol beneath which I have lived and die. So in other words, when a friend shares with his inmost heart, when a lover to his beloved And when a person does not, in other words, doesn't vainly shrink, doesn't hide from the Creator, treasuring up their secret sin, in other words, tearing off the veil, right? When a friend shares his inmost heart, nothing between you. The lover between beloved, nothing between you. You and your Creator, if you believe in God, nothing between you. Then call me a monster. Then deem me the monster for the symbol beneath which I have lived and died. That's the symbol. The symbol is the barrier between each of us in knowing ourselves and other people. You know, they say it's very difficult to know another person. Can you ever know another person? Very doubtful. People are too complex. The real question to ask yourself in this, can you ever know yourself? Or do you, in fact, wear that black veil and keep things from yourself, the truth about yourselves? This is really deep. I look around, this is the last sentence. I look around me, and lo, on every visage, a black veil. Black veils are on all the people around him. He sees black veils everywhere. So even though he was looking through the black veil, he saw black veils on everybody. Everybody has their secrets. Secrets. It's not that Hooper committed some secret sin. Everybody is guilty. Father Zosima and the brothers Karamazov, I should have put a note in here. In fact, maybe I should try to do that. Can I do that? Okay, Father. Can I do that? Am I doing that? I don't know if it's typing. Why isn't it typing? Okay, I can't do that. In any case, Father Zosima was a character in the Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky, and he said, everyone is guilty. We're all guilty, which is when I first read that so many years ago, that's a tough concept to understand, isn't it? Isn't it? It's a tough concept to understand because how can I be guilty of someone else doing something? You know, when you see bad things happening, that's not my fault. I didn't do anything. Well, you have to think about it. Because if you were a little better, maybe like the butterfly effect, that would have affected other people, which would have affected other people, which may have indirectly affected what you're looking at that's really bad. You don't know. Life is complex, ladies and gentlemen. In other words, we're all wearing these black veils. We hide ourselves from ourselves. This is deep stuff, deep stuff. So turn off if you don't want to go further. But why do we hide ourselves from ourselves? What is this black veil thing? Well, we don't want to be rejected. We're vulnerable. We don't want to be hurt. There's all sorts of reasons why you don't want to know who you are. And don't forget, that veil is like a mirror. It's reflecting back to the people, and that's why he can't stand himself when he looks in the mirror. Because if he's behind the veil, it's okay. He's looking through the veil. But when he sees himself in the mirror, he runs away from himself. Remember, he spilled the wine and ran out into the night. It's tough. It's tough. So, what is sin, right? What is morality? I don't want to get too deep into this. If you go to the dictionary, sin is an immoral act considered to be transgression against divine law. Well, what the heck is that? Well, divine law is any body of law perceived as deriving from a transcendent source, like the will of God, etc., as opposed to secular law. Secular law, right? Secular law means what? Right? Secular law is basically man-made law. So divine law is based on belief there's a higher power. Now, if you don't believe in God, then there is no higher power. Then you're forced to just use man-made laws. I don't want to get into whether you believe in God or not. That's not what the purpose of this is. But the purpose of this is to understand that the people in this story did. The people in this story that were governed by Hooper, that he preached to, that looked to him for guidance. And remember, he became a very famous preacher. Strangers came from outside the parish to come to hear him speak. Okay, he was talking about divine law. Divine law. And we can argue about that some other time. But this is all pretty deep. And since Hooper is a preacher, it makes some sense that he would be talking about sin. But there is no evidence, none, zero, that he committed some secret sin. All he's saying is we are all sinners, just like Father Zosima said in Brothers Karamazov. We are all sinners. And if you don't believe in divine law, well, then you can't believe in sin. But the story is still a classic and has many meanings. One of them is sin is equal to the veil, self is equal to the veil, and people are generally afraid of themselves. You are. I am. I don't want to admit that I'm bad. Am I bad? I try not to be bad. We try not to be bad. We do know that when you look from behind the veil, you see other people, but they can't see you. So when Hooper looks in the mirror, he runs away. Why? We discussed this already. So as a preacher, he does a lot of good things. You can see that from the whole story. If a symbol is a thing that represents or stands for something else, what does the veil stand for? This is why, Jimmy, I'm suggesting to you that the veil is yourself. It's not, it's a representation, as he said at the end of it. It's not me. You're all, because I see veils on all of you. It's a thing, it's a disguising you from you. That they all knew what Hooper looked like. And yet it shocked them when he wore the veil. Why is that? Why is that? Elizabeth, remember that great scene with her, his fiance? She's begging him, she's trying all sorts of tricks to get him to take off that veil, and he won't do it. I will not do it. She almost runs out of the room. He grabs her. He says, don't leave me alone. She says, I can't stand it. And she leaves. She leaves. This guy is alone. He took a vow to do this. Now, I would say this guy's got a lot of willpower. You know, he's getting a lot of pressure to take that veil off and reveal himself. Just show us who you are. But even if he took the veil off and you saw his face, what would you see? You would see the same face, and you wouldn't know that maybe this guy, you know, he's trying to tell me something. It has everything to do with his soul. Respectfully, we don't look at ourselves, our true selves. The veil becomes Hooper's way of showing people to themselves, like a living mirror. Like a living mirror. They call that introspection. Introspection is the examination of your own mental and emotional processes. It's a lifelong journey, ladies and gentlemen, introspection. You constantly have to test your theories, and if they're real or not, that's what introspection is. Why do you feel what you feel? Why do you do what you do? As Jimmy was at breakfast this morning with his wife after, going out and spending some time outside. And at breakfast, he heard next table, there was the father, his daughter, and the daughter's husband. And they talked about their family, their grandchildren. It was a wonderful conversation, what people do. Do they have secret sins? They didn't sound like it. They did not sound like it. They were talking about, quote unquote, normal things. Grandchildren, where they live, who their daughters are, who their daughters are married to, family life, the stuff that we all talk about, the stuff that is every day, it's normal. And then, introspection is below the normal. Are you doing everything you can to be a good person? Are you doing everything you can to help people? Or do you take pleasure, like in some of the stories we read, in hurting people? There's all sorts of type of people. But introspection allows you to look at yourself. And when you start that journey, very scary. Very scary what you find. Very scary. So don't start it unless you're ready to finish it. The veil allows Hooper to do that constantly to himself, and in doing so, becoming an outstanding preacher. And here's some additional thoughts about Jimmy's thesis on the veil being yourself. It's you. He who is without sin cast the first stone. You remember the story of Jesus? So when they continued asking him, he lifted himself up and said, he that is without sin, let him cast the first stone. When they were trying to stone Mary Magdalene, right? So I don't care if you're Catholic, Lutheran, you're not, I don't really care about your, Muslim. I don't care what religion you are. You're supposed to learn when you read things. And the Bible is a book, but it's a book like any other book. It's a book. Now, some see, well, it's the Word of God. Okay, you can believe that, but it's a book. And Jimmy loves books. Quran is a book. Read the Quran. It's a book. Well, some say Muhammad. Well, okay, whatever you believe, read the book. And when you read this, the story, right, all Jesus was doing is to say, you can stone this lady, but you better, if you're without sin like her, remember she was committing adultery? If you're without sin, throw the first stone. Nobody threw the stone. Nobody. Why? Because we're all sinners. In one way, shape, or another, we are all in that same mode. So we all have secrets. And Hooper is totally focused on helping other people, not himself. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're on an airplane, what do they tell you on the airplane? Put your mask on first and then help other people. Because if you don't put your mask on first, you can't help other people. You cannot do it. And therein lies the secret of this story. Put your veil on first and start looking at yourself, right? If you want to, he doesn't want to do anything to come between the help he gives, so he hides himself from his flock. He doesn't want them to think he's a quote-unquote regular preacher, right? He's not a normal guy. He's showing themselves to themselves, not because of some secret sin. It doesn't matter. What matters is he does it, and he carries it through. Because how do the people react? You read the story. Approach avoidance, even his fiancée, she can't get him to take off. And she's like Penelope in the Odyssey. Jimmy may read that one day. It's one of the great Greek epics, the Odyssey and the Iliad. Penelope waited for Odysseus to come back for, 30 years, 25 years. She stayed faithful to him, the faithful Penelope. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote, some people are going to say, Nietzsche, Jimmy, that's not a good philosopher. Read the book. I teach you the friend, his overflowing heart. But you must understand how to be a sponge if you want to be loved by overflowing hearts. Sorry about the typo. I teach you the friend in whom the world stands a complete vessel of the good, the creative friend who always has a complete world to bestow. That's a beautiful passage about what friendship is. You have to be a sponge. How many people in Hooper's, parish were sponges and listened to this guy? Apparently, a lot of them. After, the first incident, and he gained his reputation as a preacher, and they would come from miles away to hear him preach. They were sponges. And yet, at the end, even the young preacher, right, wanted to take off the veil. He didn't get it. You can't. It's very hard to take off that veil. Very hard. Soren Kierkegaard, a Danish theology, Kierkegaard is a great philosopher to read, said, the more a man understands himself through what he understands, the more easily he will discover he is not understood. Only those who themselves understand nothing can delude themselves into believing that everyone understands them. Isn't that the truth? Only those who themselves understand nothing can delude themselves. So what he's basically saying, if you start the journey of understanding, the more a man understands himself, don't take it as just men, through what he understands, the more easily he discovered he's not understood. He's just not understood. He's not understood. Or maybe Franz Kafka said it best in his diaries. Franz Kafka was a very interesting guy. We're going to read some Kafka later on. You find yourself painfully pushed against the wall. Apprehensively lower your eyes to see whose hand it is that pushes you, And with a new pain in which the old pain is forgotten, you recognize that it's your own contorted hand holding you with a strength it never had for good work. You raise your head, again feel the pain, again lower your gaze, and this up and down motion of your head goes on without pause. Jimmy, that doesn't make any sense to me. Well, read it again. He's telling you we're our own worst enemy. We keep thinking about it, keep thinking and thinking and thinking, right? This is maybe, you know what? Someone asked me the other day, Jimmy, who's the audience for your stories? Is it what grade level? I'm going to tell you one thing. There is no grade level. It's anybody. The audience for these stories is anybody who wants to read classic literature and have a better understanding of their own life and how to lead it. And I'm telling you right now, Jimmy does not have all the answers, but Jimmy has read this stuff very, very carefully and often. And one of the things that Hawthorne does better than anyone else, which makes him, in my opinion, a classic piece of literature, is he makes you think. He puts you in a position which is hard. It's hard to think. Jim Mattis, if you know Jim Mattis, if you know who he is, the ex-Secretary of Defense, he wrote a book called Call Sign Chaos. A very good book about strategy, military. And one of the things Mattis said is that you have to think until your head hurts. If you're going to do strategy right, and he was a pretty good strategist guy, he was a good thinker. If you're going to think, but basically not just about strategy, but if you're going to think about the world, about yourself, if you're going to think, you're going to have to think until your head hurts. It's true. Life isn't easy. No one said it would be easy. But these classic books are here to help us make it easier by helping us think about ourselves and our position in the universe. Hawthorne delivered one of the most powerful stories through the third-person narrator. It has many levels of meaning. You can read this simply as a kind of like a Salem, okay, there it is. Why did he wear this? He's got a secret sin. Oh, yeah, whatever. But it's more than that. He's telling us about ourselves. We put on our own black veils, or we strive, sorry about the typo, to take them off. Thanks for listening. This is Jimmy. You've been reading with Jimmy, maybe thinking with Jimmy. And you can email us, Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com. Jimmy, why are you so happy when you talk about such topics I don't want to think about? I know everybody's after, right? They're going to watch some sports today, I think. I don't know. Well, because this is more important. Quite frankly, this is more important than the Final Four. I'm telling you right now. Oh, no, I don't believe you. It's more exciting. Well, go for it. Good luck. But if you're going to be on your dying bed like Mr. Hooper, right, you better be aware of the life you led. Jimmy, readingwithjimmy.com, Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com. Thanks so much for listening.